You're looking live at Ford Field before the Lions take on the Minnesota Vikings in Minneapolis today. Hello and welcome to the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by Kroger. I'm your host, Tori Petry. We have a lot to talk about today. We just got word that Matthew Stafford is not of those on the inactive list today. That means he is active for today's tilt against the Minnesota Vikings. And with that, I will bring in my co-host, Anthony Bellino. Anthony, we're here at Ford Field while the Lions are in Minnesota, but hey, no complaints here because it's been a pretty beautiful weekend in Michigan.
It really has been. I'm kind of a fan of a little bit of a warmer, like late fall, early winter. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful time to be indoors here at Ford Field for the duration of today's game. But very much excited about the matchup between the Lions and the Vikings at U.S. Bank Field today.
Oh, yes, absolutely. An NFC North matchup that the Lions have on the schedule today. Let's take a look at them heading out for this game in Minnesota. They hit the runway here as they got on their Delta plane and headed off to Minneapolis. Lots of the guys looking very sharp today. Anthony, I think I've already got my eye on who I think is best dressed. We'll be seeing a shot of him here in a little bit.
Does this mean that we're going to have some sort of award? Will we make up an award for the rest of the pregame shows throughout the season to see who gets best dressed on the player arrivals, whether here at Ford Field or traveling on the road?
Listen, we might have to. Romeo Okwara right there is always bringing the heat with his outfits. Danny Amendola looked good as well. Look at that right there. I believe that is Everson Griffin. He's headed back to Minnesota this weekend. That is a big game for him. I know he is very excited to head back and face his former team. We'll be chatting a little bit about him, but Anthony, I think we're all excited to see him in action.
Yeah, and I think a very emotional game for both Everson
Yes.
Griffin and for Adrian Peterson, two guys that spent a lot of time in Minnesota playing for that Vikings franchise, definitely impact players while they were there. Of course, Adrian Peterson, I mean, his number will go in the Ring of Honor whenever it's time, when he decides to hang it up. So I think for those two, a very emotional game, going back to what used to be a former home and trying to pick up a win in an opposing team's jersey. It's got to feel strange.
Absolutely. Well, while you were talking, my best dressed of the week passed by. That was Marvin Jones Jr. in that sharp all white with the black leopard coat. That was my best dress for the week, Anthony, and that's who I'm giving our Invisible Award to this week. So wrap it up. We don't need to see any more of the player departures. That's who won best dress.
That's it. It's over. This mic drop right there. It's Marvin Jones Jr. Hey, he's a well put together man, and typically when they're on the road, he's got good style. Like I said, 44 long in the jacket. You want to pass anything down, I'm here for you, man. You got to clean out the closet a little bit.
I love it. All right, Anthony, let's take a look at inactives for today. A very important topic for us to chat about. You're looking at the Vikings inactives. No real big ones there on the Vikings inactives, but let's take a look at the Lions inactives. And once again, Matthew Stafford not on that list. That means he is active this week after spending some time on the COVID-19 reserve list. Great to hear that he is doing well, that he is healthy, and is expected to play today in Minneapolis. Unfortunately, he will not have one of his favorite wide receivers to throw to, Kenny Golladay. Unfortunately, he will not have one of his favorite wide receivers to throw to, Kenny Golladay.
Yeah, and the inactive list, every time we get a couple of names off of it, like a Justin Coleman or a Desmond Trufant, we have to throw a couple names back on it. I don't know if I really like the whole trading here. You look at Kenny G and what that means to the offense when he's not out there on the perimeter. What Jamal Agnew brings in all facets of the game. Joe Dahl on the offensive line. Tracy Walker in the secondary. It's going to be very difficult. It's a Minnesota team that's won 5 straight against our Lions. And actually, if you look back to Minnesota, they've had their struggles at home. They've lost 5 straight home games, their longest streak since 2011. And the last time they actually got a win at U.S. Bank Stadium was against our Lions last year. So when you go on the road, it's always difficult to win road football games in the NFL. It's difficult to win any football game in the NFL. But then when you go on the road and you see some of the names like a Kenny Golladay, like a Joe Dahl, like a Tracy Walker, like a Jamal Agnew, those are names and key contributors to this team. And it's going to be tough to pick up a victory without those guys on the field.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who is returning punts today with Jamal Agnew out. Obviously, who will start at safety alongside Deron Harmon. That's going to be one to pay attention to. And then, what mixture the Lions come up with along the offensive line with no Joe Dahl. But like you said, they do get Desmond Trufant back today. He is not on the inactive inactive list. So that's a big one for them as well. He's been in and out of that lineup since that injury he suffered in the first week of the season. So we'll see who ends up playing at cornerback today, whether it's Trufant and Oruwariye or Trufant and Okuda, or if Trufant just mixes in there a little bit while he's trying to, kind of get back to form. We'll see what happens, but those are your notable things to pay attention to on the inactive list. Some tough news, but some good news as well. So let's turn now to our out-of-town scores presented by BetMGM. You had that Thursday night football game between the Packers and the San Francisco 49ers. Pretty decisive win by Aaron Rodgers and company. Anthony, what games are you paying attention to today?
Yeah, when you said against the San Francisco 49ers, I was actually scratching my head because based on the roster that the 49ers had to field on Thursday night, I'm not sure what team that was, to be honest with you. But I think in the 1 o'clock window, the Seahawks, who were 6-1, taking on the Buffalo Bills, who are 6-2. That is a huge matchup. Of course, you have the Seahawks out of the NFC, the Bills out of the AFC, two teams that I think a lot of people expect to be there when we get into the second season, that is the NFL playoffs. And that's a lot of travel there to go from West Coast to East Coast, so I keep my eye out on that one. The Chicago Bears, NFC North team, of course, we're going to highlight that one on Fox at 1 o'clock. They are 5-3 on the year, taking on the Tennessee Titans, who are looking to kind of turn some things around after a couple of tough weeks for their crew there in Tennessee. So I think Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, they've got some things that they want to figure out. The Ravens and the Colts. Colts pick up a win against us last week. How will they handle the Baltimore Ravens? That one's at Lucas Oil, so I'm excited about that game as well. And then, we've got a couple of very interesting matchups. Here's one, and I'll leave that late Sunday night game for you because I know that, we have some Tom Brady in our fantasy picks. But Miami and Arizona, the Dolphins, who are 4-3, Tua Tagovailoa picking up his first victory last week, traveling to go see Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, who are 5-2, one of those two losses against our Lions there in Glendale, Arizona. So I'm excited about that matchup as well in the 4 o'clock window.
Hold on, Anthony. I'm a little surprised you didn't mention that thrilling NFC East matchup between the Giants and Washington football team. I mean, that division has just been fascinating this year.
I have taken a stand against the NFC East. I truly have. I'm going to lead this charge that we do not any longer need to see them on national television. You could spare us with that and give us some other games.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then, of course, that Sunday night football matchup, you mentioned it. Tom Brady will be on that national stage. That'll be a fun game to watch tonight on Sunday Night Football. Good rivalry between those two teams as well. You know what else is a good rivalry? You and I on our fantasy picks. And for the first time this season, we're actually going to take a look back at who we selected last week and who kind of got the edge here. And Anthony, I think I might have outdone you in fantasy last week.
You think? I mean, look at the yardage between. So when we look at the quarterback position, right? Carson Wentz, I'm like, yeah, he's taking on Dallas. He should be fine. Dallas's defense is awful. I should have known better than taking a team out of the NFC East. That's why this is part why I'm so aggravated against them.
Listen, though, I really would have been with you on that pick. Anything against the Dallas defense, I would think, would have a pretty good day.
Yeah, and the 2 touchdowns, they're a wash. You go to the wide receiver. Devontae Adams has a nice game with 3 scores, but doesn't do a whole lot of production in the yardage category. Where DK Metcalf, he adds 2 and 161. So I got my doors blown off on that one. And then Kareem Hunt against Las Vegas, 14 attempts for just 66 yards. I think the running backs were just about a wash. But yes, for the next trophy, the Jess trophy, because she put this graphic together, you get this trophy this week. Marvin Jones for best dressed, and you take the fantasy picks this week.
All right, well, at least we both flopped on the running backs. Hopefully we'll make better picks this week. We'll do that later on in the show, so make sure you guys stay tuned. But Anthony, I'm coming for 2 weeks in a row for that Just trophy. We'll see what happens.
Oh, I'm going to cross my fingers. I don't know. I think I have a little bit better of a selection at quarterback. We also want to thank Kroger for being our presenting partner of the Detroit Lions pregame show. As always, big thanks to Kroger. A reminder to you, the fans, to make sure you tune into Fox 2 each Sunday at 10 a.m. for Lions Game Day Live, and turn on Fox 2 tonight at 11 to watch Sportsworks and Lions Game Night for complete recap and interviews from this afternoon's game. And if you're watching from the Detroit Lions broadcast region, make sure you tune into your local CBS station to catch today's game, which kicks off at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. A reminder, CBS. At each home game this season, we are recognizing select teachers as our champion of the game, fueled by Campbell's Chunky. We're counting on fans to nominate high school teachers who make a significant impact in their communities. Just visit DetroitLions.com/champion to nominate a deserving high school teacher today. And Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan wants to make sure your child is ready for game day with the hashtag MyKidsCan Turkey Day VIP sweepstakes. Visit www.DetroitLions.com/Turkey Day VIP to enter your child for a chance to win a custom Detroit Detroit Lions jersey, an autographed replica Detroit Lions game ball, a Detroit Lions prize pack, and a $1,000 grocery gift card for Thanksgiving dinner. And fans, we want to see your game face as well. Today, you have the chance to be featured on this morning's show by posting using the hashtag DTEGameFace and showing us your game day energy. Don't miss out on an opportunity to be a part of Lions Game Day. Post now with the hashtag DTEGameFace.
Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by Kroger. I'm your host, Tori Petry. We are here at Ford Field ahead of the Lions taking on the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota today. And joining me here on set to break down everything about this game is Tim Twentyman. Tim, we sure have a lot to talk about today. It has been a pretty crazy week across the board, but especially for the Lions.
Yeah, especially for Matthew Stafford, maybe too. A little bit strange week. But yeah, with some of the guys going on IR and the injuries, and then not knowing what your quarterback situation was, certainly an atypical week in Allen Park for the Lions.
Well, like we said earlier on the show, Matthew Stafford is active today, so he looks like he is all set to play. We're going to get some live shots into warm-ups here in just a little bit. Hopefully we'll be seeing a shot of him out there on the field. But Tim, let's talk about this week and what this means for the Lions. Matthew Stafford involved virtually all week, and looks like he's active today and should be able to play, so we're glad he's healthy.
Yeah, and I don't think it impacts the Lions and Matthew as much as, let's say this was a rookie quarterback,
Sure.
or let's say this was a young quarterback, or maybe even a guy in a new system. None of that applies to Matthew Stafford, right? I mean, the Vikings aren't going to throw anything at Matthew he hasn't seen, especially with it being a division opponent, a team he's really familiar with in the Vikings. And so, look, I like the statistics you're seeing right there, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's what I really
good.
like. That's the good ratio there. And he's got to keep that going this week against a Minnesota defense that Tori is not the same as what we've seen. I mean, statistically at least, they've obviously lost some headline players in free agency, and they've dealt with some injuries. And so, this is definitely not the same Vikings defense that we've seen. We talked to Mike Zimmer this week, and he said there was one point where they played 7 rookies on defense in a game. And so it's a young defense, and there's going to be, I think, some opportunities there. They're dealing with some injuries at cornerback for Matthew Stafford to maybe, take some shots and take some chances and make some plays in the passing game. But he's going to have to do that without one of his best weapons as well.
Yeah. Kenny Galladay, obviously inactive today. He was ruled out of this game on Friday with the hip injury he suffered in last week's game. Tim, what kind of loss is it not having Kenny Galladay out there on the field?
Well, you're seeing the statistics on your screen right now. The 16.9 is the one that jumps out to me. There's
Absolutely.
your guy down the field, right? There's your big play threat in this offense. That's third best among receivers. And so that's, I think, what you miss. And so, look, some other guys are going to have to step up and fill the void. We saw that a little bit last week with Marvin Hall. Had the big 73-yard catch, finished with 4 catches for 113 yards, and made some catches in the intermediate part of the field, which I think we haven't seen from him. He's just been that deep threat for a year and a half.
But it's hurting his average, though.
Yeah, it's hurting his average a little bit. You see the average there. It's obviously huge. But I think making plays in the intermediate part of the field, on those third and longs, I think that was good to see. I think we're going to see Quintez Cephas, the rookie. Now, we saw him earlier in the year when Kenny Galladay was out. He filled in that role the first 2 weeks when Kenny didn't play with a hamstring injury. Like, he was targeted 13 times in those 2 games, made some nice plays, and obviously he's been a healthy scratch because of the depth that they have at wide receiver. But look, I think that's a good situation that the guy's played before. This isn't going to be his first rodeo. He played those first couple weeks and he was impactful. And so I think between Marvin Hall and Quintez Cephas, they're going to try to fill the void. And then, again, you look to the other weapons. Marvin Jones Jr. had 2 touchdowns last week. He's had 2 really good weeks together. And then T.J. Hockenson continues to be a factor as well. And we're seeing the stats with Marv there. 22 receptions, 265 yards. And that was after a slow start. He's really picked it up the last 2 weeks. And I saw a statistic this week. I've got to remember it now. I think Marvin Jones Jr. is third among all receivers in terms of touchdown catches against division opponents. I think he's got something like 15 or 16 touchdown catches against division opponents over the time he's been here in Detroit. And so this is a guy who's been very productive in those matchups. We saw the big game in Green Bay. I think it was 4 touchdowns before. Obviously, he had 2 last week. And so Marv's been known to have a big game against a division opponent. The Lions are certainly going to be looking for that today. And then T.J. Hockenson as well. We've talked about him a lot, but
we have.
We've talked about him a few times. I'm kind of high on him this year, and he's proven to be a good weapon.
You're
I
right.
think one of the statistics that I saw this week. And you're seeing his numbers on the screen right there, 4 touchdowns. That's the key number, right?
Yeah.
That's the production in the red zone. That's getting it into the end zone. That's what they're going to need from T.J. Hockenson to continue. But the 3.7 yards average separation from defenders, that's a next-gen stat, and that was top 6 in the league. And so, being able to separate from linebackers, from safeties, right? You see the good ones do it all the time, the Travis Kelce's, the George Kittles. You find them running wide open in the middle of the field, and you're like, how's that guy so wide open? Well, it's a combination of speed and obviously power and strength, and TJ's got those traits. And Darrell Bevel challenged him a couple weeks ago to say, hey, look, we need you to be a bigger part, right? We need you to get a little bit more separation, be that guy in the middle of the field that can really be dynamic for us and make plays and make it easier for everybody else. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen that. Had a big game last week, and I expect another one from TJ today, especially without Kenny Galladay. I think he's somebody Matthew Stafford looks to go to early and often.
Well, you guys saw that the players are starting to hit the field there in Minnesota. Specialists always come on the field first. That was Jack Fox punting. Hopefully, we'll get a couple more shots from Minnesota here as the morning rolls on. Tim, you gave us a lot of names there of guys who could step up, but take me into what you think will happen and who you think will get the ball the most in Kenny's absence.
I think it'll be a split between Marvin and T.J. Hockenson.
Okay.
I think those are just 2 guys Matthew Stafford really trusts. And we saw it last week when Kenny went out. Now, Marvin Hall made the huge catch, and he had 4 catches too. But I think when Kenny went out, it was really Marvin Jones Jr. and T.J. Hockenson. Those were the 2 guys that Matthew, I think, really focused in on, thought they had good matchups on. And I think that'll be the case again today. I think those 2 guys especially. And you hope, somebody, DeAndre Swift or Adrian Peterson, has a 100-yard rushing game. Or the Lions are really efficient on the ground. And then that eases everything in the passing game, right? Now you're not counting on so many guys at the receiver and tight end position to make plays in the passing game. If you could go in there and somehow run the football really well, be consistent with it, have that balance on offense, that helps out the entire operation. So I think that's first and foremost the key. But when they're in those tough situations, situations in the 3rd and long. Don't be surprised today if Matthew Stafford looks to Marvin Jones or TJ Hockenson the most.
Well, there is DeAndre Swift there getting ready to head out on the field. Marvin Hall, another guy you talked about today. Tim, I want to talk about that run game because it struggled last week against the Indianapolis Colts, but that was a really good defense that they were playing. The Vikings defense, not quite as strong as the Colts defense has been so far this year. Why do you feel like that run game struggled, and what do they need to do to get it back on track this week?
Well, like you said, that was a very good front seven with Indianapolis. But when I went back and watched the game, there's just too many mistakes up front, too many missed assignments. I thought the runners weren't as patient as they have been in the past. I think there were a couple times I thought maybe just one more second before you make that decision to go right or left. You see it, and you have an opportunity to make a play. There wasn't as much of that last week, but it's really going to start with those guys up front. Look, they're not going to have Joe Dahl, so we're going to see that combination that we have in the past with Big V probably sliding over, playing guard. Tyrell Crosby inserts into the starting lineup at right tackle, and they've had some success, running the football earlier in the season when Joe Dahl was on IR with that lineup. And so you mentioned it. And now Minnesota is still strong up the middle. They've got those couple good safeties, and Kendrick's linebacker is one of the best. So, I think they're strong up the middle, but maybe off the edges, right? Maybe attacking some of those younger cornerbacks, maybe some of those zone stretch plays. Don't be surprised today if the Lions try to get outside the tackles in their run game. I think that's where Minnesota's most susceptible. Matt Patricia talked this week about them being so strong in the middle and good in the middle. Well, make those guys run. Make those linebackers run sideline to sideline. Make those safeties, have to split the field and get outside wide. And what that does, Tori, is now if you have some really success with that, boom, you can sit that play action, right?
Yep.
And then you've got those opportunities down the middle of the field for big plays. And so don't be surprised at all today if the Lions maybe look to extend their run game out wide into some of those tackle gaps and even outside the tackles.
All right, which running back do you feel like gets the ball the most today between Adrian Peterson and DeAndre Swift? A return to Minnesota for Adrian Peterson, so obviously
that's the one
exciting
that's
for
swaying
him.
Me a little bit.
Yeah, that's getting you. You're going Peterson.
He's obviously got a little juice. Now this isn't his first time back, and look at that. That's the quarterback, right?
There
We're
we
seeing
go.
number
That's
9
the big
come
news
out
of
there.
the
That's
day.
the big news of the day.
Yep.
Is number 9, clearing the protocols and being able to navigate this crazy week and get himself back on the field. That's huge for this Lions offense. But to your question about AD or Swift, it's just. Those guys that go back to their old places, right? The guys that maybe felt slighted a little bit. I always tend to think that they come out with just a little bit extra energy. Maybe if Adrian has a couple early good runs, that's what they've done, right? Swift's going to get some early carries. Peterson's going to get some early carries, and then whoever has the hot hand is going to be the guy they kind of lean on. That's been the MO, and so we'll see if Adrian Peterson can get some early carries. We'll see what Swift can do. You're seeing the stats with him right there, the 5 touchdowns. Huge in the passing game, right? And that's why I tend to think that we're going to see as the year goes on more and more and more of DeAndre Swift just because of what he provides in the passing game. Now, AP's capable of it, but it's just that's DeAndre Swift's domain, right?
Sure.
Being that receiver out of the backfield for the Lions. So I think that will extend some of his carries as well. But like we talked about last week, this is never not going to be a running back by committee approach.
Right.
That's just not how they do it here. I mean, they're going to use multiple backs. Kerryon Johnson's going to play a third down role. Adrian Peterson's going to get some run early. DeAndre Swift's going to get some run early. Whoever's got the hot hand is probably going to see carries most of the game. And I think we can sit here and talk about that, and that's going to be the way it goes, I think, every week, Tor.
Come on, it makes it hard to choose who to start in fantasy.
It does. But I think, whenever you're looking at that, I think the touchdowns with DeAndre Swift, which you saw on the graphic right there on your screen, and then what he provides in the passing game. If I had both guys on my fantasy roster, DeAndre Swift would probably be my start more than Adrian Peterson, just because of those other factors that he provides. But and that's such a shame, right? We're seeing the field right now. Use of those other factors that he provides. But and that's such a shame, right? We're seeing the field right now. You're seeing Matthew throwing, right? And that is such a beautiful stadium. It really is one of my favorite stadiums to travel to. It's a beautiful place. It's just. It's too bad that there's nobody there to, enjoy it. No fans, none of that stuff. So hopefully we're clear from this stuff and we don't get many more views of that with no fans and the one behind us with no fans. And
Yeah, hopefully
I
not
want
too much
fans
longer.
pretty soon. Hopefully we can get by this pretty soon.
But hey, it is pretty good to see number 9 out there on that field, fans or not.
That was
I know,
important.
I
And
know
you
a
know
lot of
what's
people
funny
are
about that,
excited.
Tor, is so Chase Daniel's got the practice reps this week as Matthew had to quarantine and be apart. Who knows if that benefits the Lions down the road, right?
Sure.
And Chase Daniels talked about that as well too. He's like, I'm normally doing the scout team, right? I'll get a few reps here and there, but he got an opportunity to run this offense for an entire week, be the guy, get a little bit more comfortable with these receivers and some of the things, and just being the man for the whole week. And so who knows if there's an injury or something happens down the line and the Lions maybe have to rely on Chase Daniel to come in and steal a game for them. You could look back to this week as saying, hey,
Sure.
this was a pretty good week to get Chase Daniels up to speed on being able to start a football game maybe down the road.
Well, I think they're definitely hoping that they won't need that down the
No,
road. But if
no.
they do
Yes.
have that in their back
Yes.
pocket. So it's definitely interesting, though, how the Lions kept Matthew Stafford involved virtually this week. I mean, that's really the benefit of technology, Tim, is just how the Lions were able to keep him prepared by having him work virtually with this team. Great to see him back out there in his uniform. Great to see him healthy. That's what we want for all of these players, obviously. But Tim, certainly a testament to technology that he's able to be out there on the field today.
Do we have any pictures of what exactly they were doing? Like, was there a guy that was just like standing?
Like he was Matthew's
With-
body, but
that was just standing with an iPad like behind and letting Matthew watch
Right.
it. I haven't seen any pictures leaked out of Allen Park just to the extent of what they did. But to your point, yeah, I mean, can you imagine this happens 10, 15 years ago, and there's the technology
you're on the
isn't
phone,
what it
yeah.
is. You're on the phone. And so, yeah, but what we talked about before too with Matthew, being a 12-year vet, being a guy who's been around and done it, and they're not going to throw anything at him that he hasn't seen, and so he should be just fine. I don't think it's going to affect him that much. Maybe the only way I can see it is he didn't get to work with maybe some of those new guys that were in there as much. The Cephases, like we talked about, Marvin Hall,
Right, with
those
Kenny
guys,
being out.
they're going to step in with Kenny being out. You would have loved as a quarterback just to maybe get some extra reps with those two guys in particular. But look, Matthew's thrown a lot of passes to those guys, knows them pretty well. So I don't expect it to be a huge factor in this game.
Well, I would imagine that he and Chase Daniel had quite the debriefing to be able to kind of go over what went down this week in practice and, how guys looked and what it was like getting to run that team without Kenny Golladay out there. So I'm sure that Chase Daniel has been a huge asset, not just in case he had to play, but also just to help prepare
Well,
Stafford.
I think Chase Daniel's been a huge asset to Matthew Stafford all year. Here's a 12-year vet, right? He's been around. He's seen it. He's like Matthew in that sense. It's a very close quarterback room. All those guys, including David Blau, all Texas guys, right? They all get along. And it's a really, really good room. And I think Matthew's benefited from having a guy like Chase in there who's seen it all, who can give maybe a little bit different perspective than even Dan Orlovsky did and some of those guys that Matthew's had as in that backup role before. And so it's been good. And look, he's played in the division as well. I think that helps. So maybe there's a perspective there
Sure.
that Chase Daniel could provide. Matthew playing in this league, and look, he beat Minnesota as a quarterback last year when he had to step in and play against the Vikings, and so I think it's been good all the way around for Matthew to have a guy like that, and I think that's why the Lions went and got a guy like Chase Daniel, experienced, right, knowledgeable, smart, knows the league, knows the game, knows his role and what he needs to provide a starter, right? He's not this guy itching to start, itching to play. He knows his role. It's been in his whole career, right? He's a guy that just lends that extra eye to the quarterback, and I think he's been really good in that role. I think Matthew's benefited from it.
All right. Well, we are sure looking forward to seeing these guys hit the field at 1 p.m. today. Tim, we've still got quite a bit to talk on defense, but we will get to that just after this short break. Stick around, guys.
Love getting prices that are lower than low on food that's fresher than fresh? With the Kroger app, you can get personalized coupons on top of weekly sales and rewards like fuel points, all for prices that are lower than the everyday low. So go ahead, get lower than low. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Priorities shift from rush hours to slow breakfasts, from busy schedules to scheduled downtime. And as life happens, shifts and surprises are sure to follow. At Priority Health, we'll always be ready to shift with you, from complicated policies to ones written by humans. From a plan for one to a plan for three. Because your priorities have shifted, maybe it's time your health insurance did too.
Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by Kroger. I'm Tori Petry here on set with Tim Twentyman. We quite obviously had a lot to talk about previewing the offense, but we've got equally as much to talk about previewing the defense today. And certainly Everson Griffen, who will be playing for the Lions for the first time today, had a few things to say this week.
Yeah, Everson Griffen's a little motivated, it sounds like, from our Zoom calls this week. Mike Zimmer is coach for a long time there in Minnesota. I think, did an interview in Minnesota and said Everson Griffen was a good player. Everson took a little bit of offense. He thinks he was a great player in Minnesota. And look, he spent his first 10 years there. And
I will say he found Matthew Stafford in the backfield 16 times. So I think Lions fans think he was a pretty great player for Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, he was a Pro Bowler 4 times. I think he had 8+ sacks in 6 of those 10 years in Minnesota. So he's a great player. And coincidentally, somebody told me that Zimmer called Adrian Peterson a great player.
Oh, that's probably what does
So I think that wasn't exactly known at the time, but I think maybe that's where all that started. So, but look, hey, Lions fans will take it, right? Because Everson seemed pretty motivated to go play a game in Minnesota today. And you're looking at some of the stats there, and like 20 tackles, right? 2.5 sacks. This isn't a situation where you're getting a guy who's off the street, right? Or you're getting a guy who is a free agent, hasn't played, hasn't practiced, right? You had to get him up to speed. He's been playing with the Dallas Cowboys. He's been pretty good with the Dallas Cowboys, at least 30 snaps in all 7 of their games played. And so this is a guy that just steps into a good situation in Detroit, who obviously needs a bump from the edge with Trey Flowers going on IR this week. And so I expect Everson Griffen to step in. And look, he said, look, I'm going to show the Minnesota Vikings that I am a great player. That's those are some fighting words, Tori. So
it really was.
Those are some fighting words. And so we'll see what it means early on in the game. I think he's definitely a player to watch early in this game, see what kind of energy, what kind of juice, and what kind of pass rush he can provide the Lions on the edge. Romeo Okwara has been really, really good on the other side. And so now if you can get 2 guys on the edge that kind of collapse that, make Kirk Cousins step up into those interior guys, that's really what you want from your pass rush. And look, Romeo, you see the numbers there. 5 sacks leads the team, like 11 quarterback hits, has a sack fumble caused and a fumble recovery. I think he's one of only 4 players in the league with at least 5 sacks, a fumble recovery, and a forced fumble so far this season. And so he's been really, really productive. And if Everson Griffen can give them anything on the other side of that could be a nice little duo today against, again, a quarterback like we've talked about in Kirk Cousins, who isn't very mobile, right? The Lions have faced a few of those, Gardner Minshew, Matt Ryan, guys that aren't going to make a lot of plays with their legs. He'll extend plays to throw and look down the field. So if you can get him on the edge, collapse that pocket, make him feel uncomfortable. Kirk Cousins has been known to make a few mistakes. And so that's what the Lions want when you're talking about that pass rush off the edge, is force Kirk Cousins to make mistakes today. And then take advantage of them when he does. That's the big part, too.
Yeah, that's going to be on this offense, to be able to take advantage of if the Lions defense is able to get the ball back for the Lions. This Lions offense needs to be able to take advantage of that, and we saw them struggle with that a little bit last week.
Yeah, really struggle with it. They were just off all the way around on offense. And like we said, we talked about the run game. They got nothing going on the run game. Well, now you turn one-dimensional. And against a defense as good as the Colts in that front 7, when you become as one-dimensional as the Lions did last week, you just really don't have a shot, and we saw that with the way they attacked and harassed and got after Matthew pretty much all game.
Well, Everson Griffen's role becomes even more important this week with the Lions placing Trey Flowers on IR. That was really an important thing for the Lions to have gone out and got Everson Griffen last week before they ever knew that Trey Flowers would be injured. But now that Trey Flowers is on IR, Matt Patricia called it short-term IR, so it sounds like he expects it to be not too long. But without Trey Flowers out there, having Everson Griffen really helps open things up for Romeo Okwara, and hopefully Everson's able to make some plays piece as well.
Yeah, and I'd count Austin Bryant into that group of players as well. He was activated on Saturday, so he's gonna and so he's active in today's game as well. And
Sure.
so I think that's more of a situational thing with him. Yeah, I think you've got to work him back a little bit. But again, there's a guy that they went and I think it was a 4th-round draft pick last year, and just injuries have just really prevented him from making any impact early in his career. But you hope that getting an opportunity to play in kind of a situational rush role, which is the role I would expect of him today, that he can give them a little something on the edge. So now you've got Aquara, Everson Griffin, who you're seeing there, and he looks a little pumped up.
I think he is. I like that.
He's ready to play, and you see all the defensive linemen right there behind him. Those guys are going to be key, Tor. They really are. They've got to get obviously, first and foremost, you got to stop Dalvin Cook in the run game.
Yes.
You saw what he did to Green Bay last week, and we've seen at times teams. You look at what Green Bay did to the Detroit Lions that week 2. When you allow a guy to just go off like that, you've really got no shot unless your offense is humming on all cylinders. And so that's first and foremost, right? He's one of the best running backs in the league. This is one of the best run games in the league. Stop Dalvin Cook, or at least try to contain him. Don't let him go off, right? And make Kirk Cousins in the passing game try to make plays, because that's not their strong point. They're at their best when Dalvin Cook is running the football. They can control time of possession, and they don't have to rely on Kirk Cousins to throw it all over the field and make big plays. Now, Kirk can do that, certainly, but I don't think that's where they're at their best.
Sure.
And so I think that those guys that we just saw, led by Everson Griffin, run onto the field, it's really going to be important for those guys to contain the run game today. Be really, really good with Dalvin Cook. I don't think you can ever really stop Dalvin Cook. He's just too good a player. He's going to make some plays.
Limit.
I think he's one of the best. Yeah, you limit him, right? Don't let him go for 163 and 3 touchdowns like Green Bay did last week. You got no shot if you're Lions,
Right.
in my opinion, if that happens today. So you got to be better.
Well, good to see Everson Griffin running out there on the field, pretty hyped up today. Tim, I also want to touch on this secondary that will be defending those passes if they are able to make Kirk Cousins throw today. Couple of pieces of news there. They are missing Tracy Walker today. He was not able to play this weekend, but then you do have some good news with Desmond Trufant being back in the lineup after kind of being in and out with the injury that he suffered there in week 1. What do you feel like we should expect from that secondary?
Well, I think they're going to miss Tracy Walker, especially when you're playing a guy like we talked about, Dalvin Cook, right, who can get into that second level, and you need sure tacklers to get him down the field, or down on the ground, And Tracy Walker leads this team with 51 tackles on the year. So that's your leading tackler that's not going to play against one of the best running backs in the league. So not a great situation, but look, you expect, Will Harris to step in there, and look, Jaron Kearse, right? Another guy who we haven't talked about. He spent his first, I believe, 4 seasons in Minnesota. He signed with the Lions as a free agent this offseason. So look, he's maybe got a little bit of juice too, and I think he's played really well the last couple weeks. You see 11 tackles there, forced that fumble, which is big. And look, he's been good in pass coverage, right? Opponents are only completing 42.9% of the passes thrown his way. So he's shown ability to cover, one of those, sides of the field and be good. And so they're going to need him and Will Harris to step up today. I expect a combination, maybe both guys filling in
they
for
play a lot of
Tracy
3
Walker.
safeties as well.
Yeah, they do. You're right. And Deron Harmon's been good, and so that's going to be your 3 safeties. And then when it comes to Trufant, I think it'll be really interesting to see what the Lions decide to do, because Amani Oruwariye and Jeff Okudah, in my opinion, and if you look at the analytics, they'll support it, have been playing really, really well, really all season up to this point. And a guy like Jeff, who you're seeing the statistics on your screen right there, I mean, he's gotten better every single week we've seen him. And so do you take a guy like that off the field? Guys that have played well and guys that you're trying, that's your future at cornerback, right? So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Now, they mix guys in and have certain packages, and I would expect they do that. But we'll see if Trufant steps in and starts right away, takes one of those guys off the field, or if they just work Trufant back into some packages. Just how they deal with that cornerback rotation, I think, will be very interesting, something I'll watch early in the game.
Absolutely. Lots of things to watch for today. Like we said, lots of pieces of news that we had to cover here on the pregame show. But ultimately, when it all comes down to it, do you think this is an offense that this Lions defense is going to be able to stop today?
Well, I think they should, and like I said, it starts with the running game. That's really where it all starts. The key to beating the Minnesota Vikings is containing or limiting. I thought that was a good word by you. Limiting Dalvin Cook as much as you can, right? And then make Kirk Cousins have to go back there past 30, 35 times, because Kirk Cousins can either be really, really efficient and beat you. Or we've seen in the past that he can throw some interceptions and, he can turn the football over in those situations where he's asked to put a team on his shoulders and make plays down the field in the passing game. So I think between Dalvin Cook beating you and Kirk Cousins beating you, the answer is pretty easy. If you're the Detroit Lions, you try to make Kirk Cousins and that passing game beat you. There's more opportunities for mistakes in the passing game than there is just turning around and handing it to one of the best running backs in the league. So be good against Dalvin Cook early and then make Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, Jefferson, those targets in the passing game beat you. That's the way that you're going to have some success.
All right, good stuff, Tim. Good little.
One quick one, though, real quick. Jamal Agnew, one we didn't talk about with special teams.
Right.
That's Jamal Agnew's inactive today, too. And so one thing to watch with special teams, the return game as well. I expect Danny Amendola to be there in punt, but kickoff will be interesting. But that's another big loss that I think we should be there in punt, but kickoff will be interesting, but that's another big loss that I think we should mention as well.
Absolutely. Very worthy of mentioning. Thank you, Tim. Good stuff there on the Lions, but just a little bit, we'll have Mike O'Hara here on set with us to preview exactly what's going on with the Minnesota Vikings. So stay with us, and we'll be back right after this break.
As a part of the NFL's Fuel Up to Play 60 initiative, we partnered with the United Dairy Industry of Michigan and Kroger to provide students at Downtown Boxing Gym in Detroit with an opportunity to learn about healthy eating and nutrition habits.
Let me tell you the look on those students' faces. It truly is life-changing knowing that we were able to do such a simple thing and give them bags of food, and the impact it made on them is truly unforgettable. We couldn't reach these students that are in need in these underdeserved areas if we didn't have partnerships like the Detroit Lions. So we are so excited to be able to give these basic necessities to these children while they're also learning healthy recipes with UDIM's nutritionists on staff.
The Detroit Lions are committed to removing barriers for underserved youth in our communities. Many children in Detroit lack access to educational resources like the ones we're able to provide in partnership with the United Dairy Industry of Michigan and Kroger through our Dining from the Den programming.
Built on dreams. I love this township for my team, 'cause nobody's better.
Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by Kroger. I'm Tori Petry. We are previewing the Lions matchup with the Minnesota Vikings that will kick off at 1 p.m. today. We talked to Tim about the Lions offense, about the Lions defense, about the Lions injuries that they're dealing with today, but also about getting Matthew Stafford back on the field today. Now we've got Mike O'Hara with us on set to talk about what exactly is going down with those Minnesota Vikings. Mike, welcome to the show. It was quite a week for Minnesota in Green Bay last week. That was a huge win for that team.
It really was, and kudos to the Vikings for the way they really took advantage of the weather conditions. So when they went out there, and somebody told me, well, when we did our midweek interview with Mike Zimmer, the head coach, talked about the running game, and I said it looked like one of those back in the 70s, when they had Chuck Foreman and those guys. He says, no, it was the weather. So I said, well, it must have snowed. Then I checked. It was the wind. So it took me a long time to figure out what happened. But when you think about it, they ran the ball 34 times and threw it 14 times. That's a great adjustment by that coaching staff to deal with what was in front of them, and it paid off.
It absolutely did, because Dalvin Cook had an absolutely monstrous game last week. He had over 160 rushing yards and then over 60 receiving yards as well. So a huge day for him, both on the ground and in the passing game. What do the Lions need to do to stop Dalvin Cook today?
Well, he's on a roll, and look, he's been an ascending player. This is his fourth year in the league. The thing that's held him back more than anything is not defenses, it's injuries.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's missed one game this year, but he's gradually become a healthier player in his career, and it paid off last year. I've got some statistics here. If you don't mind reading them, had more than 1,100 yards last year, and look what he's done already this year: more than 600 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. I like that. I like that last one, the touchdowns. Not only does he gain yards, but he gets the ball in the end zones. He's also got a receiving touchdown. He's really, really been a good football player. You talk about a second-round draft pick who's paid off. That's Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, and averaging over 5 yards a carry as well. That's going to be important for the Lions to pay attention to. You got to get that guy on the ground.
And one other thing, too, and he had 30 carries last week, 30 for 163, so he showed some durability, he showed some toughness, some elusiveness. What more do you want out of a running back?
All right, well, Tim said that's going to be the key to stopping the Vikings today. It's going to be forcing Kirk Cousins to throw after you stop Dalvin Cook. So what are the Lions up against in Kirk Cousins?
Well, he's had his ups and downs, and when he's up, he's good. When he's down, he's not so good. Welcome to the National Football League. I think there's a few guys that they're good all the time. He's in that next category where you can get him sometimes and sometimes you can't. He's had really an uneven start, I'd say, to this season, Tori.
Sure.
But last week, look, he only threw the ball 14 times, but he had 11 completions for 160-some yards and the one touchdown. The big thing was he didn't hurt the team. In other words, he managed that game. He threw it on schedule, and really had a big game. And I think he had a big year last year. In 2019, they made the playoffs, and he won a playoff game. So this is just when you think there's a breakthrough there with Kirk Cousins. Sometimes he reverts, and he really has in some instances this year kind of reverted to form of it. Really, when I say you can't trust him, in other words, he gets turnovers, fumbles, interceptions, things like that. But certainly he's cleaned that up last week, and he's hurt the Detroit Lions right out here on this field last year. I remember a touchdown pass to Adam Thielen where he got just absolute great protection. I think he patted the ball 6 times before he finally let it go. Touchdown to Thielen, and that was pretty much a one-sided game for the Vikings.
Yeah, the one stat that stuck out to me from that page you guys saw on Kirk Cousins statistics, 12 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. So if this secondary that you guys are seeing get together there, if they can get their hands on some Kirk Cousins balls, I feel like that will bode very well for the Lions today.
And I think they've been better than that this year than they were last year when they only had 7 picks the whole season. So I think they've really been better in the secondary on that. But 12 and 10, it's like Jameis Winston North. Really, it's just you just can't have that. This is an old school football back in the 50s and 60s when it didn't matter as much. Now it matters an awful lot.
Well, here's who he will be throwing to today: Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. You're looking at their receptions and yards. A pretty good year for the rookie Justin Jefferson, averaging 18 yards a catch, and he has got 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, he was a really good, tough player, and I think at LSU. And one thing it kind of rings with me and some of the other people who've been around. His dad, Sean Jefferson, finished his playing career here with the Detroit Lions. Just a tough. I mean, when you talk about tough ball players, that was Sean Jefferson. He went and became an assistant coach here for a number of years, and then finally moved on. But I can see a lot in his son, in Sean Jefferson right here. It's like I say, that doesn't fall too far from the tree.
Absolutely. And then you got to worry about Adam Thielen, who you mentioned already. The Lions certainly are aware that they've got to look out for that guy because he's burned them before.
Yeah, he has before, but this is really, I think 2 years ago he really reached his peak, 100 and some catches. Last year, only 30 catches, but he played 10 games and he was injured. I think really his problem started here in Detroit. He got hurt on that touchdown catch when he kind of slid into the wall back there. But he's come back. He's got 35 catches. He's got 7 touchdowns. That's 1 per game. I'll take that ratio, 1 for 1, any day of the week for a wide receiver in touchdowns to games played.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's turn the page and look at that Vikings defense now, because this is a unit that has been giving up quite a few yards, Mike, a very different defense than they faced last week in the Indianapolis Colts.
Well, you caught me turning the page here because this stuff doesn't come off the top of my head because there's not much up there. But it really is, look, they've got 3 players I think I really like defensively that I would take in a minute. Eric Kendricks, the linebacker, who's everywhere. Just, if you've got a widescreen TV, you'll be able to catch all the things he does because he is everywhere. Then the safeties are just terrific. Those are 3 playmakers, but they've really been stripped out of pass rushers and on the defensive line through personnel changes, whether it's whatever the reasons. I mean, Daniel Hunter's had 14.5 sacks each of the last 2 years, had neck surgery, hasn't played it down. talked about Everson Griffin. He's really, as Mike Zimmer called him, the Energizer Bunny. They traded Ndaku to the Ravens after 6 games. He had 5 sacks already. All those guys are gone. Tori through the first, and we can get wrapped up in statistics here, but here's one I think that means a lot. Through the first 6 seasons of Mike Zimmer's regime there, and they'd averaged 41-point-something sacks per year. They've got 14 after 7 games. That's 2 per game. That doesn't get it done in the National Football League, and it certainly doesn't get it done the way Zimmer plays his defense.
Well, you're looking at the defense comparison between that Lions defense and the Vikings defense. A lot of similar numbers there, but the Lions are on top in the interception ratio there. They've got 5 to the Vikings 3, and I think that's going to be a key today is protecting the ball and then also trying to get some turnovers.
Well, we saw last week what turnovers can do, and the Lions are in the game. It's 2014, and they're driving, semi-late in the third quarter, and all of a sudden Matthew Stafford, a strip sack, loses the ball. They come back, give up a touchdown to the Colts, and then on the first play after the kickoff, interception return for a touchdown, game over. You got to protect the ball in the National Football League. It's been said over and over again, and I don't know exactly what the ratio is, but the number one predictor in pro football in winning and losing is turnover ratio. So protect the ball and take it away.
All right, Mike, good stuff there on the Vikings. We've still got to talk about keys to the game, so we will get to that in just a minute. You guys don't go away. We'll be back after this break.
Love getting prices that are lower than low on food that's fresher than fresh? With the Kroger app, you can get personalized coupons on top of weekly sales and rewards like fuel points, all for prices that are lower than the everyday low. So go ahead, get lower than low. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Show off your Lions pride with the official Detroit Lions debit card offered only by UMCU. Choose how you will represent your team with 3 signature Lions designs. UMCU enhances your banking experience with access to a convenient mobile app, nationwide network of ATMs, and 24/7 online banking. Plus, cardholders get special member-only offers from the Lions. Join UMCU to get your exclusive Detroit Lions debit card today. Visit umcu.org. Hello and welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by Kroger. I'm Tori Petry here. We are getting closer and closer to the Lions kickoff against the Minnesota Vikings in Minneapolis today. I'm joined here on set by Mike O'Hara, who has done a great job previewing the Minnesota Vikings, but now we've got to talk about what the Lions need to do to beat them today. So Mike, what is your number one key to this game?
Well, the key to the game to me is for the Detroit Lions not to beat the Detroit Lions.
Fair.
Try to beat the Vikings. It's hard enough beating the Vikings, but don't beat yourself too. Don't make it a doubleheader. Just play one game and play against the Vikings and do it like we already said in the first segment about the 2 turnovers at the end of the game. Okay. I mean, you're going to get them, but you can't let them pile up like that. Earlier in the game, they had a 3rd and 14, got a pass interference call. They had a sack. Was going to force a fumble. No, they get a penalty on that. So that's 4 just gigantic plays. One is a touchdown. One leads to a touchdown. Another one keeps the Lions from taking over the ball and forcing a punt, and bingo, they get another score. So really, you can make a case that that's like 20, 21 points that the Detroit Lions cost themselves. You don't beat anybody doing that. Now you might skin by the Vikings, but don't count on it at all. Play more efficiently. Get the running game going. If you don't, this is just me, then throw the ball. That's what they have Matthew Stafford for, to throw the ball. You look at what happened last week. They had 11 called runs and 7 runs. You do the math on that. I think the key word here today is limiting. That is limiting.
You've been listening.
I'm all ears.
I love it. Well, another thing I want to touch on is that we talked about this on the podcast, the One Pridecast presented by MGM Grand Detroit this week, is that the Lions have struggled at home so far this season, and they've actually been better on the road. So they're on the road today. Mike, what's the key to keeping up that energy?
That's a great question, and they're indoors too, so they might feel at home on the road. I don't know. The Lions are 3-1 on the road. They're 0-3 out there. Okay, out there is Ford Field. I don't understand it, but it's been a problem. This is the 4th straight year really, that it's been a problem for the Detroit Lions. They haven't been over 500 now at home in what is now 4 years. So, what's the difference? I don't know. Flip a coin. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. Even in this COVID year, Tori, when it's so different, Tori, when it's so different, there's no reason that you shouldn't protect home field. But they're not playing at home today, so you know what? Maybe the road favors the Detroit Lions. Keep it going.
All right, I like it. And then they also need to be able to keep it going after they have a hot start. We've seen them get some hot starts so far this season. It certainly happened last week against the Indianapolis Colts, but they got to keep the pedal down.
Tori, really briefly, that's why they say play 60 minutes of football. It's great. It's great to make a big rush at the end and fall short. It's great to take a big lead. 60 minutes of football. That's what they keep the clock for.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for hanging out with us here on the pregame show. We always appreciate having you.
It's great being here.
Well, Anthony and I still have to get to our fantasy picks a little bit later on in the show, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back after this break.
To honor all the brave men and women stationed around the world who protect our freedom here at home, the Detroit Lions and Kroger invite you to submit nominations for your hometown heroes. Submit your nominations today at DetroitLions.com/hometown heroes for a chance to be honored this season.
We would like to also once again thank Kroger for being the presenting partner of today's Detroit Lions pregame show, and make sure you tune into the home of the Detroit Lions after the game, WJR AM 760. You'll get all the latest info on the game, plus hear from Coach Patricia and many of your favorite Lions players. That's the Lions postgame show on WJR AM 760, the radio home of the Detroit Lions. This season, there are even more ways to get into the game thanks to Lions Bingo presented by BetMGM. Lions fans can play along for free all season long for the chance to win great prizes, including the grand prize each week of a weekend stay at an MGM Resorts location. Just download the Lions mobile app and register to play Lions Bingo each and every week. Play along during the game, and once you hit bingo, you score courtesy of our friends over at BetMGM. Learn more and lock in your Lions Bingo board before kickoff by visiting the official Lions mobile app now. And all morning, fans have been submitting photos showing their game day energy using the hashtag DTE GameFace, and you can see fans from all over are ready to go for today's game. Thanks again to all of our fans who are part of today's DTE GameFace.
All right, I am ready for this next segment because it is time for our fantasy picks of the week. Anthony and I reviewed our picks from last week, so we get to pick again this week and see how well we do. Anthony, I'm excited because we'll look back at this next week and see how we performed, but I want to know who you're taking at quarterback today.
Wait a minute, you are excited. I just wanted to make sure you're excited. I was not excited after my performance last week. I tried to go out on a flyer on Carson Wentz. Never again. Not doing it. Okay, so first off, I'm going to go quarterback. I'm going to take a page out of your book from last week because I think it's a huge matchup. I'm actually going to go with Tom Brady, the quarterback of the Buccaneers. He's got a big game against New Orleans. New Orleans has struggled defensively against the pass. This is a huge matchup between all-time greats, 1 versus 2 in passing touchdowns, completions, total yardage. It's an epic matchup on Sunday Night Football. So I'm going to roll with Tom Brady today.
All right, it's funny you say you're taking a page out of my book from last week because I'm going to do the same and take a page out of your book from last week and pick the quarterback who's facing the Dallas defense. So this week, that has been Roethlisberger at the Steelers. That Steelers team has been fantastic this season, and the Dallas defense not so much. So that's who I am taking at quarterback this week. We'll see if my pick against the Dallas defense works out a little bit better than yours did last week, Anthony. So let's turn now to our wide receivers. He got at wide receiver.
By the way, Roethlisberger, he's going to torch him. He's got plenty of weapons around him. All right.
Speaking of which, though, before we do move on, last week we talked about our quarterbacks, and I said that I was going to take Patrick Mahomes if that wasn't too easy of a pick because he had just the Jets on tap, and I was correct. That ended up being a bloodbath indeed. Yeah,
and for our fantasy picks, we try to go for value. We try to pick somebody off the board a little bit. We try to differentiate. Thank you for not picking Patrick Mahomes. Okay, a wide receiver. I'm going to go with the guy who allegedly, according to television commercials, they say everything sticks to his hands. Stephon Diggs. Seattle at Buffalo. Seattle right now, 32nd against the wide receiver when it comes to fantasy production. Stephon Diggs has to have a huge game for Josh Allen and company. That is a big-time matchup between two teams that we both expect to be playing in the second season when it comes to playoff time. So I'm going to go Stephon Diggs with the Buffalo Bills.
All right, I'm picking a guy who has been underrated at the wide receiver position, probably because because of the team that he's playing on. That's Terry McLaurin with the Washington football team. They're facing the New York Giants today. We know that NFC East situation has been rough this year, but Terry McLaurin has still played really well this season, so I'm thinking he's going to have a good game against a struggling Giants team. All right, we've still got to do our running back picks. We both flopped last week. We did not do well on our running back picks, so let's hope we do better this week. Who are you taking?
So I'm going to go off the random board. You went Terry McLaurin on wide receiver. I'm going to go James Robinson, Houston at Jacksonville. The Jacksonville running back getting it done on both in the run game and in the pass game. Detroit did a very nice job of being able to temper him, but I'm going to go back to James Robinson. Houston 30th against running backs this year is like that matchup for him.
All right, you know who I like this week, and this is a pretty obvious one, but it's more so your reminder to put him back in your lineups this week because Christian McCaffrey makes his return to the field. Listen, my fantasy teams have been terrible this year because I had Christian McCaffrey in one league and I had Saquon Barkley in the other one, and both those guys went out early, but Christian McCaffrey is back this week. I'm expecting a win on my fantasy team. You guys don't forget to put Christian McCaffrey back in your lineups. He's at Kansas City today, but I think he's going to do pretty well.
Well, he's definitely going to get the touches, that's for sure. Great to see him back, and I'm sorry to hear about Saquon and Christian McCaffrey. I'm sure on draft day you were feeling really good about things.
I know, right? I had these high picks in my fantasy leagues, and then, we
happens.
know how that turned out. All right, we still got to pick our Lions, though. So, Anthony, who are you taking for your Lion?
So I'm going to go, it seems like one of us is choosing him every week. I'm going to go T.J. Hawkinson. He had
for good reason, though.
For good reason. He had career best 7 catches for 65 yards last week. The Vikings have allowed 488 receiving yards to tight ends this season, which is the 4th worst in the league. Packers tight ends had 8 catches for $125 last week. No Kenny Golladay. I'm expecting to see a lot from T.J. today.
All right, I'm going to go real off script with a guy that neither of us have picked so far. All right, I'm going to go real off script with a guy that neither of us have picked so far this season. That's Marvin Hall. It's because Kenny Golladay is out. That's who I'm picking this week is going to get some big play time today for the Detroit Lions. He had over 100 yards last week thanks to a 73-yard catch, but I think he does it again this week. That's who I'm taking, Anthony, so we'll see.
And I'm rooting for you. I want you to know that. I'm rooting for Marvin Hall. I hope that he has a big game today because, like you said, that's a very kind of off-script pick from where we've been, some of the real big notable names, but he should be very impactful, him and Quintez Cephas.
All right, good stuff, Anthony. Let's get to our starting lineups presented by Ford. It's on defense this week. There's your defensive line: Nick Williams, Danny Shelton, John Pennicini, and Romeo Okwara. Then at the linebacker spots, you've got Christian Jones, Jelani Tavai, and Jamie Collins Sr. And finally, in the secondary, you have Will Harris, Desmond Trufant makes his return, Amani Oruwariye, and Duron Harmon. Those are your projected starters presented by Ford. And that does it for our pregame show today presented by Kroger. We appreciate you guys tuning in to the pregame show. As always, don't forget we will be back here for the postgame show presented by Priority Health after the game. But until then, if you are in the Lions local broadcast region, make sure you tune into the game at 1 p.m. It is on CBS this week. Thanks, guys, so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you after the game.